full disclosure, I did not want to cover this story, but so many of my patrons sent me messages asking me to make a video on it, that this is me bowing to the wishes of the community. And yes, become a patron. I do listen to what my patrons have to say and what they want content covered. You want to know why I don't have 5-minute videos? My patrons don't like 5-minute videos. They seem to prefer videos at around the 20 to 30-minute mark. They pay for the content. They get what they want. So become a patron today if you can afford it, and if you want to see more stuff like this, or more sort of the stuff you would like to see my views on. Some background as to why I am hesitant to cover this. First of all, I've seen very compelling evidence that attempting to fact check or rebut fake news is better at spreading the fake news instead of rebutting the fake news. So I don't want to be a part of spreading this fake news based on the research I have seen. There's no way around it if I want to talk about it at all. Hence me being uncomfortable about it. So maybe this bit of background at least will allow you to learn something today. The why of the story, if you will. There is a unique problem with covering video games, and gamers in the mainstream media, in that they do not have full-time staff employed to cover specifically video games, the video game industry, and gamers. That is not true of sports. That is not true of film and television. It is unique in entertainment that there are no salaried gaming experts at various newspapers, cable newsrooms, and local news stations. They pull someone in who already works there, who happens to play video games, and they do it for no more money. And what that means is the quality of reporting in gaming, in the mainstream, tends to be terrible. It could get a lot better on dedicated gaming sites, but at least the dedicated gaming sites have a basic idea of who the players are and how these various technologies work. The people assigned to cover these stories, or who decide to cover these stories because they met someone somewhere at a Starbucks and decided they were cool and pitched the story and got a yes for a throwaway thing on online, where some, digital manager goes, oh, stuff with gaming and it does well, fine. But no one up the chain knows enough about the industry to know whether something is accurate. Now, this is news. This is not marked as op-ed. It should have been. These are people's opinions more than fact. The core fact in this video entitled How Gamers Are Facilitating the Rise of the Alt-Right, the fact, as you see in the first byline sentences, logline. I always mix that up. Leading up to the Charlottesville rallies, alt-right organizers used a messaging service called Discord, originally created for video gamers. I can believe that's true. I'm sure Discord is being used for a lot of things that have nothing to do with gaming. It's the next statement that is contentious and has not been properly vetted. And that is, this is the latest in the history between the alt-right and the gaming community. Now, this may seem like an innocuous statement at first, but it implies that the alt-right has some unique history and connection to video games that it does not have with TV or sports. And I dispute that claim wholeheartedly. And those are just two examples of other forms of entertainment consumed by people who self-identify as the alt-right. Where do I begin on this? This is difficult. Let's give this piece, the fact that Discord was used to organize the Charlottesville rallies. That sounds plausible to me. The thing about Discord is you have to build community on Discord like you do anywhere else. And people are not going to flock to alt-right Discord channels or whatever they're called. I don't use Discord very much. Full disclosure, I know enough to know how it works. But I am not one of these people who spends a lot of time in interest communities. I don't have the time to do a lot of multiplayer gaming right now. Because of Lady Bits, I have used Discord to play Grand Theft Auto Online with some people. You know, the multiplayer mode, that is it. But that's enough to show me how it works. You don't accidentally trip over an online alt-right meeting. And if you do get invited to somebody, it's like, what's this? Oh God, it's the alt-right. I'm going to leave now. If you don't have any interest in alt-right views or principles or anything like that. Discord cannot force you to start adopting alt-right views. And you'll notice the headline was not how gaming technology facilitated the rise of the alt-right. It was how gamers facilitated the rise of the alt-right. That is a factually inaccurate statement. There is no evidence that gamers, the majority of gamers, have done anything directly to facilitate the rise of the alt-right. If you actually think that Discord, which has only been around for the last few years, actually established the roots of this movement that has been festering in America since, I mean, there are roots in the 1990s when, you know, the Newt Gingrich and Rush Limbaugh Contract with America uprising happened. There's roots in some people's disappointment with Tea Party activism. They didn't think that the Tea Party activism did enough, or they rejected the Tea Party completely because all those, you know, no good, lousy economic numbers weren't identitarian enough for their liking. But there is also a huge element of the alt-right that is a direct backlash to the two elections of Barack Obama. And this is how correlation is not causation. We do not blame Barack Obama for the rise of the alt-right, although certainly the rise of the alt-right has some connection to America finally electing a president who was not white. It fuels and who happened to be a Democrat. It fuels this idea that America is a white Christian country and they are losing that to immigrants and secret Muslims, you know? Obama did not create that sentiment. He became a target of that sentiment. Many gamers, similarly, do not share that sentiment. They abhor that sentiment. They are stuck using services with people who believe those things because there is no political check to get onto Xbox Live, or in this case, Discord. Gaming community is not gamers. They are equating two terms that are not the same. Gamers are a subsection of the gaming community. The majority of people who play video games do not self-identify as gamers. And some people who do identify as gamers don't play on PC. You cannot make the case gamers in general are facilitating the rise of the alt-right. Okay? These numbers just don't fit. These are accusations based on stereotypes. Now, this idea that because someone uses a piece of gaming technology to do something it wasn't intended to do, this is gamers facilitating. Well, they knew that was weak. And so the story later on moves into bad things people say on Call of Duty, blah, 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 here we go. And then, of course, they've got Peppy, which isn't a gaming thing. It's a message board thing. And then the thing a lot of people got upset with, that they took one particular vile individual, sent a series of really graphically violent tweets to Anita Sarkeesian. They did not call themselves #Gamergate. They changed these apparent tweets to make it seem like Gamergate was sending these with regularity to multiple women. And it's not right that anybody sends a tweet like this to anybody. Twitter was far too lax for far too long about this stuff. You send a tweet about like this to someone, you should get your account shut down. But you cannot mass blame a whole movement. No matter what you think of Gamergate, you cannot blame an entire movement for the bad actions of a relative few. No movement can stand up to this. The Women's March would be decimated in public opinion because of the horrible public statements that Linda Sarsour has made on certain topics. You cannot collective blame a group for the bad actions of a minority of that group. And that is the inversion of cause and effect and the confusion of correlation and causation that this piece commits. I hope I've made that point clear. It would take 4 hours to lay out all the evidence that shows you're wrong, but the burden of proof is not on me. The burden of proof is on this article to prove their headline, that gamers are facilitating the rise of the alt-right. Not game technology, not game companies, the tens of millions of people in North America alone, the hundreds of millions of people around the world, possibly billions of people around the world who consume and play video games. That is what the title of this article states. And the title of this article is false. Gamers are not facilitating the rise of the alt-right. Gamers cannot stop the rise of the alt-right. Now, the point of connection between the alt-right and Gamergate was how Breitbart leapt on the issue like vultures circling a corpse. They saw this latest fight, and for people who didn't follow gaming community stuff before Gamergate, every 3-4 years, there's some dust up. It's Gertzman Gate, it's Retake Mass Effect, it's things like that. They tend not to be resolved in a way that anybody especially likes. The video game community has to get better at conflict resolution and crisis management. It does. The companies are still not very good at it. You get these people having these knee-jerk reactions to outcry, going, "Shut up, you bunch of entitled losers." And you can't take that back. Once you lash out like that, you have lost control over the situation. Now, the gaming community and the gaming industry and the games press lost control of the Gamergate controversy very, very badly. And part of it was they let Breitbart, and specifically Milo Yiannopoulos, play them like fiddles. And you guys know I am no fan of Milo Yiannopoulos. I am the opposite of a fan of Milo Yiannopoulos. But the fact that they let that guy, who, if anything, is completely transparent about what he's about, the fact that they let that guy control the dialogue is inexcusable. And this is part of the reason a lot of gamers won't excuse the behavior of the games press. Instead of going, "Thank you, political shit disturber. Welcome to gaming," the people who have been here a while are going to have a sane and sober discussion, and we're going to ignore you. They made this self-identified, alt-right aligned Breitbart reporter the face of Gamergate. And I had more debates than I can count with people who were involved in Gamergate. And I was saying, what are you doing? Making this guy, and they're saying, there's no spokespeople, there's no leaders. They were using that grassroots structure. I said, if you don't name spokespeople, People like this, places like Breitbart, are going to self-appoint themselves your spokespeople. They are going to co-opt your message. They are going to co-opt your narrative, and it's going to be worse for you in the long run. And what I kept hearing from people in Gamergate, pro-Gamergate people, were, we don't like Milo. We think he's immature, but no one else will listen to us. No one else will report on us. No one else will talk to us. No one else will give us a chance. And why would no one give us a chance? Because the games press was behaving in a tribal manner. They were just going, nope, you talk to Milo Yiannopoulos, we're not giving you the time of day. We're calling it out. We're standing up. And so everybody collectively lost control of the mainstream narrative, because then with the rise of Trumpism, Yiannopoulos hopped on the Daddy Trump bandwagon. Seriously, guys, that's what he called him, Daddy Trump. Yiannopoulos' whole deal, the reason he engenders this public fascination, is because he acts like a child, constantly throwing a tantrum, and keeps getting this mainstream legitimate coverage for it. No thinking person can figure it out. And I don't blame him for that. It's working. He's getting all this attention, which is what he wants. And all the mainstream would have to do is refuse to cover it. But the fuse got lit, and then the violence at Berkeley happened in response to him speaking, and all of a sudden it was a legitimate story because people legitimately got hurt, and he was the speaker. So that's how a media narrative, an artificial media narrative, gets created. And no matter how many polls, no matter how many surveys, no matter how many deep dives showed that the majority of the participants on the pro-Gamergate side were left-wing, more on the classical liberal side, but people tended to lean left. They didn't have a huge problem with immigration. They didn't have a huge problem with multiculturalism. They had no problem with abortion. They had no problem with gay people. They had no problem with gay marriage. In fact, a lot of people were openly supportive of same-sex marriage. That is hardly the alt-right. And there was this confusion between gaming trash talk, 4chan culture, and the alt-right. There is an intersection, but they are not the same thing. The challenge is that the manners of speaking are very similar with some notable distinctions. The alt-right adopted a lot of the language of the internet, a lot of the syntax on the internet. And of course, you know, they bring up linguistic analysis or whatever it is in this piece and try to make it seem like a big deal. But that's just human nature. People decide friend from foe in part based on the way they talk. And gamers are very distrusting of outsiders. So if you can't take a little trash talk, they don't want to play with you because they see you as a destroyer of fun. Now, you guys know how I feel about trash talk. I understand that if everybody's with it, you're all friends, and you all know nobody doesn't mean anything by it, that's fine. Nobody's getting hurt. You guys know that my rule of trash talk is people need to have the license to tell you to stop, and you honor that. Because the whole point is for everybody to have fun. And if somebody's not having fun, then they're not having fun. People don't play games to feel bad. But just because a 4chaner who is just an anon and speaks in the language of 4chan sounds similar to an alt-righter, that does not make them a member of the alt-right. The thing about the alt-right is it's a parasite within the gaming community. It adopted a lot of the memes. It co-opted. It appropriated a lot of internet and gaming memes for its own purposes. So the idea of Peppy the Frog, which predated the alt-right by years. I remember when Peppy started appearing in 4chan. It was a whole feels bad man thing. And Feels Bad Man became a meme. And when somebody was like, oh, Sad Frog, I didn't even know his name was Peppy. It was just the Sad Frog, the weird Sad Frog. I remember we used to walk around Anime North going, Sad Frog, Feels Bad Man, you know? And then it was Feels Good Man. And this was, you know, This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things was a thing. And Jake Ass was a thing. That was more of a something awful thing. But, you know, there were these memes. The alt-right co-opted it. And instead of it going, well, the alt-right took this, but it originally belonged as just a generic internet meme. People went, it's a racist meme. The poor guy who created it with the children's book. Like, oh my God. Confused, cause and effect, inverted, correlation and causation. Take the whole Kekistani thing, the idea of Kek, Top Kek. Top Kek is a World of Warcraft reference. It's the way the general chats jumble the words. So I believe it was OMGLOL. The Kekistani thing has now been seen as this alt-right thing. It isn't. The whole idea of that was just another way of saying LOL because people were peppering LOL everywhere and it was getting boring and, you know, people were going LOL, OMG, LOL. And so it became everybody started using LOL. So to define people who have sort of similar interests and share similar sentiments, the internet created Kek to differentiate from the mops or, you know, the noobs who had LOL had bled into the popular culture enough that we needed something else to identify one gamer to another. Why? Why is it so important that gamers can identify each other? Because there is a high degree of stigma about being a gamer. Negative stigmas about gamers are used to do everything from sell products to create teenage angst in 1-hour CW dramas. It sucks that one of the people who were the biggest proponents of showing people with lives playing games was Kevin frickin' Spacey. He made Frank Underwood a gamer. I'm like, no, why? You know, the other shows that seem to do it, I forget one of the Friends guys. It's either Matthew Perry, one of those guys. He was big on putting gaming content. The producers of Bull have a lot of positive, you know, the Michael Weatherly show. They're starting, but in part of that is because, you know, EA is putting a lot of money. It's always EA titles. It's always Madden or Titanfall or something like that. Now, a lot of us complain about EA with cause, but it's great that they're putting their money where their mouth is and embedding that advertising in games, because those sorts of shows, you know, when NCIS does something about gaming and doesn't make gamers look awful, the target demographic for those shows is older people, so that's very important. We need those positive examples of gaming on NCIS and Blue Bloods and those procedural dramas with older people who watch, because we need to get it into the bloodstream. Otherwise, it's going to take a lot longer for this crap to stop. So, to recap so far, the media takes a small portion, Breitbart as self-nominated mouthpiece for Gamergate, made that equate all of Gamergate, made that equate to all of gamers, which is not true. They also took internet memes which were appropriated by the alt-right, and we were always at war with Oceania. They are inherently alt-right symbols. But internet culture is so misunderstood, and the purpose of offensiveness on the internet is so misunderstood that they're allowed to get a huge amount of power by appropriating symbols, appropriating memes, and controlling the narrative. The alt-right is controlling the narrative like crazy. And they did test a lot of their tactics on the gaming community before jumping into the greater political sphere. They saw Trump as a great opportunity, jumped on there, and off we go. But they weren't gamers. You look at a lot of these guys, Milo Yiannopoulos being one of them. He called gamers yellow underpants, whatever. He was insulting to gamers until he could use them. And that was my big complaint with the enemy of my enemy is my friend tactic that Gamergate used with that guy. I knew it was going to go bad, and it puts me in a really difficult position. And this is what I'm going to make my final note here on. It puts me in a really difficult position because at the time I had conversations with the sort of core Gamergate people of the time. They weren't always pleasant conversations, but we kept the dialogue open. One of my biggest complaints outside of this tactical, I guess this is a tactical thing, but it was very hard to keep a private conversation private in Gamergate, and people would post snippets on both sides. They'd post snippets of what you said and make you look as bad as possible. And then they'd exploit elements of the interest. So if you didn't keep logs of everything, so you could show your side of the story, because they do things like, oh, they'd screen cap a piece of a Twitter DM conversation or Facebook conversation, then block you. So their side of the conversation disappeared. So you couldn't go back and have a copy of what you said. And this was going on both sides. Those sorts of manipulations were going on both sides. Why? It was a massive garbage fire that attracted a lot of attention-seeking opportunists. But there was a core within Gamergate who was legitimately concerned about the ability or lack thereof to trust the reporting in the games media, the gaming enthusiast press. There was a core of people, and it was not small, who really cared about that. And those people keep getting dismissed by mainstream accounts. Now, I told them at the time, your alliance with Breitbart is going to bite you. Here's why it didn't matter to them. They never had a victory condition. The number of people I spoke to who are good people went into Gamergate expecting to lose. It was the nerd mentality of you stand up for yourself, you're going to get beat up anyway, but at least you can tell yourself you stood up for yourself. But if you can't imagine victory, if you can't see yourself winning, you have no chance of winning. And this was the big problem in Gamergate, is the people fighting for the pro-Gamergate side, a lot of them went in with a mentality that losing was inevitable. And so they lost control of their narrative because the people who were in it to win it kicked their butts in the PR arena. Now, I'm in a difficult situation, and I told them this at the time. I said to them, I can't tell your story if you guys aren't willing to actually work with people. If you've just convinced yourself you're going to lose and this is the way you play it, nobody in their right mind is going to stick their neck out for you. And a bunch of people, a bunch of reputable people, including Boogie2988, who is the nicest guy in the freaking world, and I don't understand why anybody's mean to the guy. But a lot of people stuck their neck out because right was right and got badly burned for it. And so now you see the people, oh, Gamergate was just a complete shitstorm and everybody was wrong. I agree that Gamergate was just a complete garbage fire. It's one of these things. It's like gaming became a failed state. And when there is a failed state, bad actors come in because it is easy to operate within a failed state. And what that does is that the people who were living in that failed state, who just, they didn't choose to live there. They were already there. They were the locals. All these bad actors with much bigger guns and much bigger megaphones came in. And the residents, the original residents, became at the mercy of these mercenary thugs. And we see this all over the Middle East, that, the local populations are being menaced by these, imported mercenaries who are fighting proxy wars. And that's exactly what happened with Gamergate. And the people who I watched get increasingly preyed on by those mercenaries are now being labeled as mercenaries. When they had legitimate concerns, they didn't know how to effectively voice those concerns. No one was patient enough with them to get through the freak out. Like, all right, talk to me here. Don't yell, talk to me. The community work was not done. And so we got all these opportunists preying on the people that we should have embraced instead of shutting out. And now I'm in a real moral quandary, because I will not sit here and let the decent people I know legitimately cared about ethics in the reporting of the video games be treated either like they don't exist or they're liars. I know they were there. I spent hours and hours and hours and hours listening to them. Now, what happened is those good people eventually left. They're not, and there are a few of them that are still there. They've got obviously very strong stomachs, or they're huge gluttons for punishment. But most of them left. The few, the proud, are still there. But even they, I still talk to them. They admit that the Gamergate subreddits and things like that have been more and more taken over by people who are more anti-SJW types, or, crossover with Trumpism or all that stuff. Gamergate kind of became this self-fulfilling prophecy that because the media would not allow it to be anything but an alt-right haven of misogynists, it morphed into something that much more closely looks like that. And that is what happens with groups. I saw that happen again and again and again in the community I grew up with. Young people who tried so hard to stay on the straight and narrow, but because almost every interaction they had with someone in a position of authority or an entity of authority presumed that they were gonna go bad, most people get to a point where they just can't fight it anymore. And they fulfill your expectations of them. And that is what happened. That is what happened with gaming and the alt-right. It wasn't that the alt-right started in gaming. And it wasn't that gaming facilitated the alt-right. Gamers were not able to fight off the alt-right because they got no help from the industry or the media that's supposed to cover it as enthusiast press. That is what happened. They were left at the mercy of these alt-right opportunists, and they either got co-opted because they just wanted somebody to protect them, or they fled. And there are some continuing really, really interesting discussions about ethics and disclosure and how to cover games. They're happening, but they're happening in private. They're not happening in the press. The field has been completely abandoned to the bad actors, because the bad actors were the only ones the media allowed to exist. That's what I saw. You can accept it or you cannot accept it. But I know in my heart of hearts that this is not just fact. It is the truth. because truth is assembling facts in a way that preserves the integrity of those facts, you know? And a lot of people don't understand that. You can take a fact, like alt-right organizers used a messaging service called Discord in the lead up to the Charlottesville rallies, and turn it into something completely false, which is how gamers are facilitating the rise of the alt-right. The goal of journalism is to take facts and assemble them in a fashion that preserves truth. And this article, this video, does not meet these standards. I would not consider this reportable. Yes, they have 3 sources, but they all come from the same ideological side of the fence. It is not diverse enough opinion to create a more well-rounded picture of what's going on. And I get it. This is journalism is commerce. They just want the clicks. They don't care how angry people get. They just want the clicks. And I had to refresh this page 3 damn times. So I gave them 3 clicks covering this. But that's my take on this. Hope it helped. If at the very least, I hope you recognize that someone still remembers what happened and is not willing to hide for their own self-preservation. I need to get better at self-preservation, but that is a story for another time.